welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and this is our last show of this year. We always take a few months off during the summer and then come back in October. And amazingly, this is, we're finishing up our 13th season right now. Wow. So, yeah, it's been a lot of years. Tonight's guests are Art Costa and Jerry Sinnamon, who are respectively the president and the chairman of the board of Thames Valley Sustainable Connections. And we're going to talk about a few of the different things that Thames Valley Sustainable Connections has been involved in. And I think what we're going to start out with is Hodges Square, because there is a lot going on there, for one thing. And I know Art and Jerry both remember 10 years ago, Hodges Square was not on anyone's radar screen.
No. I mean, you know, where we go back to with Norman Garrick.
That was December 2009.
Wow,
Mark.
You got that right down. Yeah, that was the moment of truth. And it woke me up, because even though I grew up here, Hodges Square was not on my radar. And it was his prompting and you know, really great. He's a great resource, and so he brought it to the fore. And then, you know, we had a whole bunch of meetings and workshops and so forth just during that period of time with the We Connect New London, and then of course now with the Hodges Square Village project, which also includes Riverside Park.
It does, and I have to remember, we'll have to talk about this historic district too, as part of what's happening there.
Yes.
Sometimes it is really good to get fresh eyes on a place, because I do remember, you know, when you had recommended that Norman be on our show to talk about transit stuff, and you know, he was driving by and past Connecticut College, past the Coast Guard Academy, went through downtown, ended up in my house near the hospital. And almost the first thing he said was, downtown is a mile from the campuses, but it doesn't look like a college town at all.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think many of us had really thought much about that, but it sort of started the ball rolling.
It did. And I think, you know, folks in New London have, over the past maybe 20, 25, 30 years, whatever the time frame is, have been thinking about how to connect or bring down college students and the cadets who do venture down, but how to make that a much more integral part of New London. And there have been a number of different thoughts about that. Usually it's like a busing or routing them around. And what Norman brought to this, I thought, which was really important and different, was how we can weave this corridor of William Street and Hodges Square back into New London, and rather than circumventing it, which seemed to be some of the thinking at different times. But so yeah, we have come quite a long way in terms of the stuff that's been worked on and so forth, and you know, and Jerry can chime in with any of this. We've done a lot of it's been beautification. We've been collaborating with the city, and so we know that there are things that a community can do, but then there's a point at which we need the support of the municipality and the state, because this corridor is a Department of Transportation's kind of purview in large part. But the community around it is New London and the residents and businesses that are there. So yeah, it's we've got a lot of stuff going, and I don't know if you want to travel through the pictures and or
I think we can start and show the first slide, because this is the historic Hodges Square, and it really kind of points out that you know, the watering trough, which was used for horses before it became a corridor known for its gas stations, but it was kind of a waypoint between different areas. And honestly, I think it did have that function in New London for a long time, kind of connecting what was up north with the city of New London.
It was a gateway.
It was, and hopefully will be again. And we'll talk more about bicycling, but people might know that if you want to take a bicycle over the Gold Star Bridge into Groton, you have to go to Hodges Square.
Mm-hmm.
Take a left at Mr. G's.
Yes.
Right, and in that path, there's both people who commute to work through there, but there's also, I've seen young people taking trips with some guidance, but maybe 20 to 25 students on bicycles, and they'll rest there in Hodges Square. And then I've seen adults meet up there coming from Salem and maybe East Lyme and so forth, and they meet up and then they go on a journey across the bridge to Mystic and beyond. So it's definitely a hub in that sense.
And now I'll just kind of fast forward to Back to the Future, actually.
Yeah.
Because this has not all been realized, although some of it has been. And this is from the report that came out of the 2012 Creative Placemaking Project, the part that Brian Kent planned for Hodges Square. And we do see that the watering trough is in this photo, and at the time, of course, it was photoshopped into the photo.
Right. And now it's really there.
And now it is really there.
It's there. And we do, and I know that we'll get to this, but we do have a whole series of priorities for this area that we're working through one by one. And so there is a plan, and we're ready to move on different fronts based on resources, in some cases grants, funding, particularly for the highway, the road, and so forth, that the city has really worked with us on.
But moving the fountain, or whatever we call it, was sort of like a keystone in terms of people all of a sudden said, yes, something is going to happen, because that was not an easy trick to move that fountain.
No, it wasn't. It took a couple years even
Right.
to get from that futuristic drawing to the fountain. Now, I know, Jerry, you got involved with the Creative Placemaking Project, working on the economic development of that area aspect of it. Maybe you can speak a little bit about that piece of it, and then after a while we'll get to like streetscape type stuff.
Well, we had a series of community meetings, and the whole purpose of those meetings was to identify some leadership for the community. Secondly, to find out what they were, what was their interests. And there were two primary interests. One was doing something with William Street and slowing down the traffic, making it more pedestrian friendly, bike friendly. And the second one had to do with building some commerce that be able to provide services that people who lived there didn't have to leave the area to begin getting some services. And so a lot of our initial work was looking at, what kind of things were we looking for. And the biggest interest was something like a coffee shop that people could congregate. It would attract students. It would sort of feed the other businesses that were there. And so we're still working on those initiatives.
Some things have definitely improved, though. I know that area has been designated kind of a food desert because for food stores for people to walk to, the options are fairly limited. I mean, it's not that far from ShopRite or that far from Fiddleheads, but right in the neighborhood, the old grocery
Universal.
store was
Yeah.
Was terrible, but actually it has been replaced by something that I couldn't call a full service grocer, but it's much improved.
It's much bigger than a convenience store, and definitely I agree that the quality, the look, the cleanliness, everything about it is many times better than it was back a couple of years ago. Yeah. So that has made a difference, and people, shop there. They can walk to it, and and so that's a big point. So yeah, the commercial side, as Jerry said, was one of the focuses of our effort, as well as identifying the geographical landscape for this area, and so we did do that. And of course, the hub of it is the Hodges Square, which I think had like 300 and some odd families right around it, and then it branches out to about 3,000, 1,500 families surrounding in the larger Hodges Square area, or northeast New London, and that's how many families. But there's about 3,000, not counting the college campuses and which is the Coast Guard and Con College.
And honestly, the college campuses could be a real source of economic activity. They're not far. I think the academy can't be more than, 4/10 of a mile perhaps from the trough. And
It's a hop, skip, and a jump.
yes, and Con College is made maximum 3/4 of
Yeah.
a mile. So we're talking certainly walkable or bikeable distances.
And that is very much on the radar in terms of what can we do to both slow the traffic down so people have a sense of entering a community rather than a pass-through to get on the highway. And so we're working on some of the relatively low-hanging fruit of that in terms of walk signs that never existed there, and crosswalk so that people stop and as people cross the street. And I think we're looking to get a sign like you see around here where the how fast you're going.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing how well that works. It does make everybody check and think, gee, I didn't realize I was going 35 in a 25 mile an hour speed limit area. So those are some of the, but we have a whole series of things that'll be done over time, again, with the city's help. One of the things, just to give people a reference point, is we've talked about, bringing things down to kind of the human level. So things like lighting, street lighting. Anybody who's been to the municipal parking lot will notice that those lights are maybe 7 feet, maybe 8 feet at the most, and they really have a feel of lighting, but also a sense of a village kind of environment. And so the city does have plans to redo the street lights and to put that kind of lighting on William Street. So that can make a great difference to the feel of the area and the safety, the feeling of safety in traveling through it.
Now, I'm thinking that the fact that that part of William Street is a state road creates some extra challenges. Has the, how do I put this tactfully, has the attitude of the Connecticut DOT become more flexible in terms of roads being friendlier to more than just the automobile?
Well, I can't speak about in terms of what they've done so far here, but they are responding. For instance, even putting those signs out for pedestrians to cross required the approval of DOT. And I think initially the city said, let's put them out there and ask for forgiveness later. And they did that, and I think that's not a bad way to proceed. But they did have to then get approval, but that happened fairly quickly.
I've noticed that Main Street in Old Saybrook is a state highway, just like this is a state highway. And there's been a lot of work there to slow and calm the traffic. a lot of left-hand turns, were eliminated. So I think if the city and the association work together, they will have the cooperation of the state with, if they have enough, perseverance. I think the state has programs for making things pedestrian friendly, so I think we can make it work.
I think the state is doing it in other places. I know in
Yeah.
Hartford, where they're redoing Route 84, is also with an eye towards
Right.
being safer for pedestrians.
And
friendlier
to,
for
that's another
pedestrians.
city that where you had the highways were cutting the city in half, and they're trying to do something with that. And so this is another area where it was the bridges and the highways to the bridges that cut the city in half. And so I think we're looking for some support with that. So.
It seems to have happened to a lot of our cities. New Haven, I don't know to what extent they have, but they had a real detailed plan on complete streets, which is harmonizing the automobile, pedestrians, and bicyclists. So to answer your question, I think that there's ever more. I mean, you read it in the paper just recently. Was it Mystic is talking about creating, even was it Ledyard as well, where you're kind of out in the country, and they're talking about making the streets friendly to non-automobile users, which is a big. The streets aren't just used by automobiles. Highway,
Right.
it's a little different, but.
Do you want to talk about that?
Which?
Oh, yeah, the
sculpture?
sculpture mile.
The Sculpture Mile, yes. Well, this is an interesting in many ways. For I'd say maybe a couple of years, we've talked about, that is the Hodges Square Village Association, has talked about maybe working with Lyman Allen to come up with a sculpture display that would create points of destination along the way. And of course, many cities, I mean, if you go to Miami and probably any number of places in New York and so forth, they've got sculptures as part of their neighborhoods, and it's very attractive. In any case, we talked about it, and we wanted it as a group, and then lo and behold, there's an organization called the Hollycroft Foundation in Iverton/Essex, and they've been around since the 1990s, I think, and they made this offer to the city, and then the city said, well, geez, this has been a point of discussion in Hodges Square. Maybe they'd be interested in pursuing this and creating that mile, which is would really take you from the downtown courthouse, and there's a particular sculpture there, and then end it at the foot of Lyman Allen.
Oh, wow.
And Lyman Allen has a plan, and they submitted a request for funding for a recreational pathway, which would be bicycle and walking friendly. And they would have sculptures going from Conn College through their campus, which is about 12 acres, and then that would touch this that we're talking about here, and then take you straight down to through Hodges Square, Williams, down into Huntington, and then stop at the courthouse. And that's the plan, and we've done a lot of walkarounds to say where would be some good places. There's a number of private properties, and so we'd need their permission. And then there's city and state, and so we'd work to get that okay as well. So the goal is by early September to have these sculptures in place. They're all done by, in some cases, world-renowned sculptors, and a lot of them are from the Northeast of the U.S., and a good number are from Connecticut. And so we just had a couple rather fun ones that copycats
Oh, yeah, in fact,
provided.
let me find the
Yeah.
slide. It's not in order, but here, we can
Yeah.
take a look at this.
Exactly, and it's a kind of him and her sculpture, and it's a little bit more fun and cartoonish in a way. As the gentleman who runs this, he's quite a character. He's almost 90 years old, Bill Bendig, and I'll be walking with him tomorrow, and their director to do a complete walk with Huntington, and as he reminds me, now these are the fun ones, but we have some very serious sculptures, and they are all really a whole variety of work that really is we're lucky. Let's put it that way. This won't cost the city anything, and we'll probably have. We'd like to have assurances of 2 years in a location, and they rotate out after a year, and a new sculpture would be put in place of that one, and that's the idea. And the cost of installation, et cetera, is all handled by the foundation and the sculptor.
Now, there was talk at one time of perhaps lighting or murals under the overpasses. Now, I know, bridge repair is in full progress right now, but are there still plans when that's completed to try to make those pinch points more attractive?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
In fact, I think they're trying to do something prior to the bridge being finished, where there's a couple of overpasses that aren't impacted by that, and I believe we're working on those. I think the issue is trying to get some funding for it right now, but they're looking to keep that going, even though the overpass or the bridge work is going on right now.
I was really happy to see the work on that pathway from Lyman Allen, from the campus down to the north end of Hodges Square, because as we've seen in the past, the walk down William Street or the walk down Route 32 to those points is really unattractive and
Right.
in some cases
Sure.
dangerous.
Sure.
So it's really great that students will have a pleasant way to get, to traverse the north part of that walk to downtown.
It's a little bit of a puzzle because you need to get some commercial going there so that people want to stop in to a coffee shop or a bakery or what have you, or even a bicycle repair would be wonderful in that area, or rental, bike rental. But so it's part of that. But I think what we can do between the lighting and the murals that you just mentioned and these sculptures, and somebody actually, and I don't know what would come of this. I haven't talked to Bill about it, but somebody mentioned to me they would love to do tours of the sculpture trail, and so maybe this could be added to the heritage. What is it? The Thames River Heritage.
Right.
Yeah, as part of that whole come to New London and see the all of the different historical sites. So that would be helpful. And the other thing, and not to there's the park we may want to touch on a little bit, and then maybe get to the priorities that talk to what is in the planning, some of which has been done, but a lot of it's still outstanding.
Now, so we have some slides of the Hodges Square Park, the parklet, which, we were talking a little before the show about like zoning changes, and this actually is the first park in New London that's on privately owned property that is not an accessory use to something else.
Right.
And it actually did require a zone change, but that opens up the possibility of it happening in different parts of the city, which is
Absolutely,
fantastic. We have the Hygienic Art Park, but that's next to the Hygienic, so it's a little different status. But now, you know,
We have
empty parcels.
picnic tables.
Let's take a look. Now,
we
this
have
was a construction
this.
project.
Of Conn College, and a gentleman who's an architect, and he had his students and he worked on the design and then implementation. Now, they had planned other things, and they weren't able to go any further for a number
Yeah.
of reasons. But we decided that rather than pursue that whole parameter or
Yeah.
perimeter, that we would do something a little bit more flexible, and that is to put 8-foot long picnic tables that were custom made for here, and we have umbrellas for each. We have 3 8-foot long by 4 raised beds with all kinds of a variety of vegetation, and we've got chairs and benches and so forth. And we had music playing there for a couple of
If it would only
Saturdays.
stop raining, you could
That's-
have it more Saturdays.
Well, that's always the issue. It's either rain or something. The only thing I will say in terms of a plan, we wanted to back up a little bit. On the 27th of July, and we'll have more information with time,
Sure.
we're planning to do more of a concert
Oh,
type event, but this would be, rather than on Saturday, it would be a Thursday, and it would be in the evening, 6 to 8. And we're working in some of the local businesses who are going to offer some discounts on food. You can bring that and have a nice picnic while you listen to the music. So that's in the works, and we may have some other activities during the course of the summer and into the fall. So it's a nice park for people to come and just get away from things, and you know.
and I think part of the issue is that people have not been accustomed for many decades to come to Hodges Square.
No. Right.
So old habits die hard. This is, undoing 50 years of neglect.
Exactly. Yeah, it's gonna.
And it's the hard part is finding the people who are willing to continue to stay with it, because it takes time, and you have to create your own momentum, because the momentum is all going the other way. I mean, momentum is how fast can you go on William Street.
Yes.
And slowly in 3 to 4 years, there has been created a core group of people who are willing to spend a lot of time keeping that momentum going. And so I think this sculpture mile is a real winner in terms of turning things around, because a lot of people will want to come to see the sculpture.
Yeah, this sculpture mile, we will be the 8th town or city to have this. And they're really trying to build it primarily along the shoreline, but they have one in Manchester, and they have it in Essex, and they have one, their biggest one is Madison. And they have thousands of people who come there, just to see the sculpture.
Wow.
And walk that mile. So we're anticipating that this will help to connect all of that between Lyman Allen, the Conn College, downtown, and Hodges Square.
And to demonstrate to everybody how close they are.
Yeah.
It is just a walk.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really is close.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, and it's when you don't have things to see and reference points, it can seem like a large distance, but it's really not.
Yep.
So we're excited about this, and I think we're not the only one. The whole city, I shouldn't say the whole city. Whole city probably doesn't know about it, but we definitely have seen a great deal of excitement because of it, and we'll continue to work to make sure that we're not getting ahead of ourselves. We want the community to be part of it, and to as much as possible embrace it and see this as really kind of a nice addition to what's there.
Now, you had sent me a list of some of the principles that are being are guiding the streetscape repair along William Street, and I looked at the list and couldn't help but think we have a lot of streets in New London that really could benefit from these principles. But maybe you want to talk a little bit about what goes in, what the thought processes are in terms of what changes to make.
As you alluded earlier, there's a master plan for this area, and it came out of the placemaking that was a joint effort, but Brian can't really put a lot of this together. We had another gentleman part of this on the Riverside Park, and due to some family issues wasn't able to complete that. So Brian really picked it up, as he tends to do, and put that together. We did a piece of it, but most of the work in terms of design work and so forth came from him. So he helped with the prioritization, but what I would also say is what that plan did was it gave the city a working document that they could then drill down in, and they were at that time hiring a city planner who is not fully dedicated to Hodges Square, but she is definitely a good chunk of her time is part of this effort. So she comes to every one of the Hodges Square Village Association meetings. She works with the engineers because you have to get it down to that level to start, really providing DOT with what they need and grants and so forth. So Brian put together, and some of it we had accomplished, but most of it we haven't, but it's out there for us. It's kind of like this mile. You plant the seed, and then the moment comes where you can implement it. And that's kind of what we have here, a plan that when the right things happen, we're ready to move. And so if you have that list, then we can probably just kind of quickly.
Yeah, I actually do, but I also I don't have it on a
Oh,
slide,
okay.
Unfortunately, so
Okay.
we'll have to talk about it.
Okay.
But number one was slowing traffic, which of course, you don't have to do all at once.
Right.
There are some crosswalks that didn't exist before. There's a little more to see right and left.
Mm-hmm.
The traffic still could get slower,
A
but
lot
it's slower than it
right.
was.
Right, bit by bit. And the idea is to narrow that street to maybe 10 feet instead of what it is now, which is quasi-highway.
I'm thinking the travel lanes are probably about 14 feet each.
Yeah, they're far too wide, those streets are. And so narrowing that, now there is some, and Jerry mentioned Old Saybrook, and the main street in Old Saybrook has a meridian, very nicely done, with planters and so forth in the middle, and that has been offered up as one way to go. There's another way that we've been thinking about, which is maybe not the meridian, but rather to narrow the street, some bump outs, that sort of thing, that might help to.
Because that street was twice as wide in Old Saybrook as this one is.
Oh yeah.
So
oh yeah.
there was space for the meridian. We don't
Yeah.
really have that. So.
Yeah.
No, but we could do a lot. And one of the points that I think Brian Kent made over and over again, that using just like paint and planters,
Exactly.
you can do a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah.
And part on the list is things like benches and garbage cans and planters and
Bike
a lot-
racks and so
Yeah.
forth. So
and a
we
lot of that has already been done.
and we've done that. We can do more, but we've got it going. And there was something when you mentioned what Brian said. There's a little theme to think about. What is it? Fast and quick and cheap or something like
yeah.
that. That there's a lot of things. Some people refer to it as low-hanging fruit that can be done at low expense and done fairly quickly and get us moving, so that even if it's to experiment with something like bike lanes, do we have to have permanent ones to get it started? And there are ways from which to lay those out.
And much of the picture that you showed,
The future.
the future, that included a lot of construction.
Right.
But a lot of that could be done with paint and plant, and stopping, changing the street arrangements at the square, just like New York City did in terms of Times Square. So
they've done it in a lot of places.
And that was
the
with
last
paint.
few times I've been to New York City, it's like I hardly recognize it. So much
Right.
of what used to be the just car travel lanes have been dedicated now to bicycles, to sitting areas,
Right.
and it is mostly with paint and planters and not heavy construction.
Right.
And that's some of what is recommended here, and I think these are good guiding principles. He calls them vertical elements, but things like some trees that would fit in the area that would be appropriate for an urban environment, and again, better wayfinding signs. It's improved a little bit, but it could be better.
Yeah, that area is hard to, I mean, once you get off William Street, actually, the area is hard to navigate. I remember
Yes.
when we had our first Riverside Festival in 2011, and we had invited the then owner of the Portuguese Fishermen, which was right in Hodges Square, to come up and sell hot dogs. And he emailed me to ask me for directions.
Ooh. Yeah, I know.
It's like even from Hodges Square, people
Right.
don't know how to get to Riverside Park.
And that is a result of when those bridges came through. A lot of it, as described, the circuitry was utterly destroyed. So your streets don't seem to follow a pattern that people can easily follow to get to places like Riverside Park, which is a big, a relatively large park, not to be able to find. But he also, we talk about those street lights, kind of a pedestrian scale or human scale, would also really make some real changes in that. And the thing is, the city has had a plan to redo all the streetlights in that area this year. So it's thought that, okay, we're going to do it. Why not do it using the lighting that we've already established as, as good in the municipal parking lot? Why not extend that? And another configuration here that I think is important is there's a reconfiguration of Route 32 off-ramp that enters William Street north of Gordon Court to a T-stop. So that is what's going to really help the flow of everything, including students.
Right now it's designed like an on-ramp.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how people drive on it.
Yeah.
They do.
And it really makes walking on that side of the William Street almost impossible coming down, because you can't trust walking past that intersection.
Now, we do have plenty of time left, but I don't want to miss out talking about the markets.
Right.
But I wanted to ask you a little bit also about McKinley Park, because you did put in a slide of McKinley Park.
Yeah. So why did I do that?
This is an area. Yes. Why did you do that?
I'll tell you why I did that. I did that because, first off, you'd mentioned this park. You talk about not knowing. I mean, here I've been in this area now for a number of years there, and not like when we talked about, you mentioned McKinley Park, and it was like, where's McKinley Park? And it's like, where is it on a map? It's right there, but it's kind of like the purloined letter, it's there, but you don't see it. But, so here's why it's a beautiful little park. And I didn't appreciate it when I first went there, and now that it's late spring, summer's coming and all that, it really kind of blossomed. And there's a nice entranceway, although it doesn't have real car parking to get there, but you can get there from one side street. But from the Coast Guard, not in the Coast Guard, but from that side, there's a nice walkway right into the park. The reason why I bring this up is because we have identified that as one location for the sculptures. And so it does have good viewing from that road.
Yeah, it's way above street level.
Yeah, and so I think, I mean, you know, anything can change, but I think we're talking about maybe a few sculptures just in that park, and the Department of Planning and Development is meeting with the Park and Rec to get the okay to do that, and so that's why I put it in there. I mean, I think that is a great little park, and it needs to get some visibility. It's,
Beyond being used for protests
Right.
every few years.
yeah, well, so be it. It has every place has got a little protest
Right.
greenscape.
But maybe we can use it the other 364 days a year.
Right. I think if people discover that and just kind of walk around there, I see people walking there and with their dogs or their children or just by themselves. You could put, I don't know if there are any picnic tables, but you could probably put a couple.
Yeah, there are fruit trees there.
Yeah.
That were planted a few years ago. I don't think anyone's really maintaining them. But there are apple trees. I'm not quite sure what other fruits. So at one point it was conceived as being part of like creating a food forest.
Yeah, that's a nice idea. So, and if we can bring in some nice sculptures to go with that, we give people a reason to kind of explore it, and so hence that's why it's on there.
And the one thing I also wanted to mention before we go on to the markets is that Hodges Square was recently designated a historic district. And so what does that mean?
In detail, I couldn't. I'd have to go to New London Landmarks to give you the
but in terms
specific.
of like what...
In general, what the Historic Society of Connecticut, for want of the real name, did was they went building by building, house by house, to determine what structures were historical. They stayed north of the bridges. So my first question was, well, where's the Old Town Mill? Because we see that as a real historical site and value and everything, which also will begin to play more of a role in this area. And they said, well, it was outside our scope here of this. But Riverside Park is part of it. I think what it will mean is there'll be tax credits for home improvements and building improvements in general. The Hodges Square building, which is considered a historical resource, that is, it serves the community historically from a historical perspective. Whereas, just to give the gas stations aren't.
Right.
You know, so even though they're there and they do serve the area, they are not considered part of it. So, you know, certain structures may not be, designated historical, but much of the area is, and there are some real benefits. And
the benefits primarily to owners who want to improve their property, and there's no restrictions on what they can do in terms like some historic districts, but there is some tax credits that...
So it's kind of all carrot and no stick.
Correct.
Which is a great thing.
Yes.
Well, I think we have only about 7 or 8 minutes left, so I wanted to
we'll just go right
talk
through this.
about the markets because they're starting next week.
Yes.
So,
and,
are you going to be a market manager again this year?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so
And so we're going to have our first market in Williams Park. Yeah, that's right, Williams Park.
Yes.
Not Memorial Park, which is down the street, but this is Williams Park, which is...
the one that's had so much work done
on the corner of Granite,
and
yes.
Near
Williams.
Dunkin' Donut. That's
Yeah.
And it begins on the 7th of July, and then the market in Groton starts the following Tuesday. And then every Tuesday and every Friday after that, and through October 31st, we'll be having a market from 3 to 6. And we have an array of farmers at both markets, And then we have other providers as well. And so there will always be a cooking demonstration. There'll be music at most of the markets. We make it very easy for people to use credit cards. They come to the information tent and they swipe their card. They get tokens, and they can use the tokens wherever they want to. We do EBT, and for people who buy their first $5 worth of EBT tokens, we match that.
That's a good deal.
So for $5 they get $10 worth of produce. And so we've got plenty going on, and we encourage rain or shine, by the way, unless
And we
it's
hope for shine.
unless it's a thunderstorm or something. We're there, rain or shine.
Now, these are both afternoon markets, correct?
3 to 6. 3 to 6.
Yeah. We're also offering a new feature or whatever, gift certificates. So if somebody came to the market, either for themselves or if they wanted to give a gift to a relative or friend, they could go to the information booth and, using credit or a check or cash or whatever, and have this and give it to somebody. When they come back to the market, when the person comes back to the market, they would get tokens, and they could use them at either market, just like if they were using credit and debit, as Jerry mentioned. So that's a new feature. And what's the other thing? Oh yeah, I brought the bag, and this is a bag we will be selling this bag, New London and Groton, and it's for $2. And the idea is just to kind of cover costs, but we really want people to use it. And we know everybody has a bag for Fiddleheads, and they have a bag for Stop and Shop, and so they get a bag, and that's how that'll go on. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else about that.
Well, what kind of things, we only have like 3 minutes,
Okay.
or 2 minutes, but what kind of things can people buy there? I mean, there are a lot of different vendors.
The specialty stand, Jerry takes care of that, and
Honey, maple syrup, and jams and jellies that people go wild over, and we have pickled beets, all kinds of crazy stuff.
relishes, pickles, you name it, we do it. Yeah, we basically non-perishable, but these are items that people really like to have at a market. But we learned some time ago that if you had a honey person there, it's a little difficult to sustain that market after market. And so if we have honey, maple syrup, and jams, etc., and we are the market, then we can keep that going.
And we have a dairy at both markets this year. We haven't had that, and so that's milk, it's chocolate milk, that's ice cream.
Ice cream,
Cool.
yeah, for everybody. I was going to say for kids, but
No, that's
I don't
for
know.
everybody.
We're all kids when it comes to ice cream, yeah.
Well, if in the last minute or two you have, maybe let people know how they can get more involved with either the Hodges Square endeavor or Thames Valley Sustainable Connections in general.
Yes, probably. Well, let's. You can go to TVSCI, Thames Valley Sustainable Connections Inc. Incorporated.org, TVSCI, and from there you can go to the website for Fiddleheads. I'm giving them a plug here, which I don't mind doing. And there you can go to the New London Field of Greens, or you can go directly to the New London Field of Greens.org website, and then whether you go through TVSCI to go to the Hodges Square, which you can do directly, and there on your screen is Hodges Squared, 2 S's in the middle.com. And you can find all about the details, the zoning that has been laid out. So we have a good picture of the existing zoning,
great.
and the master plan, etc. And the people. But if you go to either of those sites, there are telephone numbers and contact information. You can email us through that, and we'll be glad to give you information or put you on our newsletter so that you can be informed.
And one last question. When does the Hodges Square Village Association meet? If anyone wants to go to those meetings.
The second Monday of each month at 5:30. And we will maybe be going back to the Old Mill, but right now we are at, and there's notification on the website if we go to the Old Mill or not. But all of our minutes and all of our agendas are on that website, and we have somebody who does a great job in administering all of this. But yeah.
Okay. I guess we're out of time. I'm getting the signal. Thank you, Art, and thank you, Jerry, and we'll see you all over the summer at the markets and throughout New London and Hodges Square.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
What we